Thank you, Madam President. We've heard much this afternoon, and I'm not one for the 10-second radio soundbite, but I do need to illustrate a point. When one of the honorable members uses what I consider the opportunity for the 10-second radio soundbite and talks about financial audit for drug officers, and then gets up and leaves the room and does not remain present for the substantive debate, I think that tells you something. And I must say that because that was heard around the country, that comment. So all I can say in respect to that particular comment, and I'll address some of the procedures that are in place. If that member feels so serious about it, stay in the room, come back, draft a letter to the governor, draft a letter to the police commissioner, spell out your concerns, and ask him make recommendations for what you want to be done. Don't take the 10-second radio soundbite with the Royal Gazette in the room as well, say it, leave, and not be here for the substantive debate. Madam President, the amendment we're talking about today is an amendment to an existing piece of legislation, the Proceeds of Crime Act. Probably the best thing to deal with first in response to the questions and queries raised is to set that amendment in the context of what the substantive legislation says. Section 50 of the Proceeds of Crime Act, we're proposing an amendment to that Section 50 today. Section 50 already exists. I'll try to keep this in layman's language rather than reading all the legalese of the actual act. But what it says is it's expanding the police power to seize cash. There are a number of other mechanisms already in the legislation, and there are really two further steps. Seizure is one thing. Detention is then governed by a magistrate, and that order has to be applied for, I think it's within a 48-hour period. So in other words, cash seized by virtue of this section shall not be detained more than 48 hours unless its continued detention is authorized by an order by a magistrate. So that's step 2 in the process. Step 3 in the process is the police have to keep that cash locked up. And I know that the police have on prior occasions taken large sums of cash, and to ensure the total integrity of the seizure, the investigation, and the sheer quantity of cash, they've actually deposited that cash in banks. So there's no safer place to put it than within a vault within the banks. I know that's one of the procedures that has been done in the past. The third step, so we have seizure, we have detention. The third step that's well covered in the Act is the act of forfeiture. Now, Bermuda's already recorded cases where there have been 7-figure forfeiture orders coming out of the courts. So that's the 3-step process. There are safeguards, obviously, all along the way. The honorable member who led the response to this particular debate, who's no longer here, talked about legislation in other places and talked about watching police movies. Well, I'm here my remit is about Bermuda. I don't watch police movies. I had 27 years of this as a real career. So I'm not going to even address what movies he may have watched. So I'm just going to dismiss all that part of it and actually say what the facts are. And that is, even that predates me. There are a number of procedures in place under the existing Police Act. And under the Police Act, what's called the service standing instructions are written. Those service standing instructions spell out a number of procedures, what to do when anything is seized by the police, be it drugs, be it cash, whatever it happens to be. There are also, Madam President, there are policies in place that are authorized by the Commissioner of Police, and those policies govern all procedures in the police, and in particular what we're talking about today is the seizure of cash and drugs, or cash in particular. Then there is also the Police Complaints Authority Act, so if anybody has any issue with anything the police do, they are more than welcome to file a complaint to the Police Complaints Authority Act, and a number of people have done so, obviously all through the years, and that procedure is totally independent of the actual police service as well. The last item, I guess, sometimes when it comes to legal language, those in the public or those who might be listening today might need an example of sort of what does that mean at the end of the day when the police are doing their job. The police already have a number of powers under the Misuse of Drugs Act and the Criminal Code to seize cash. So this amendment, what it seeks to do is, because there were some restrictions in the Section 50 as it existed under the current Proceeds of Crime Act, this clause really, it gives the police officer, where a police officer finds cash in the execution of his duties in any other circumstances. But the important thing is that reasonable grounds test must be satisfied. So I'll just come up with an example right off the top of my head. If the police are doing a firearms warrant and go into a house, and the warrant is under the Firearms Act, they may find a firearm on top of the table. There may not be any drugs in the residence, but there may be $300,000 cash under the table. So at first blush, the connection, the investigation was a firearms investigation, but the cash they're finding, they just have to satisfy the reasonable grounds test and then go through the 48-hour procedure, and all those steps have to be satisfied all along the way. I think that deals with the questions and issues that are raised, Madam President.
Sure.
So, that concludes the...
Certainly. We move to second reading.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act 2011 be now read a second time.
So moved. Any objections? There are none.
Madam President, I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
So moved. Any objections? No objections.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act 2011 be now read a third time.
So moved. Any objections? No objections.
Madam President, I move